All right, we'll call this City Council special meeting agenda for Monday, August the 11th, 2025 at 3 o'clock p.m. to order. Roll call and certification of quorum. Madam Secretary has certified that we have a quorum present as all members are present, as Mr. Patel is walking to the dais. Welcome, Rishi. Glad to see you. With that, we'll move to citizens' comments. Did we have any comments turned in? None. So we will move to new business presentation regarding the fiscal year 2026 proposed budget. With that, Trent, we'll turn it over to you guys.
Thank you, Mayor, and good afternoon, Council. As mentioned, this is our budget discussion number 2. And as everyone's aware, we did modify the budget schedule this year to allow us to cover the capital improvement program, the enterprise fund, the Economic Development Corporation, Visit Pearland, and our special revenue funds at the workshop on July 14th. That new schedule allows more time for discussion on each part of the budget, but also more time to concentrate on the general fund associated with the tax rate tonight or this afternoon. Just to give a little bit of the last couple of weeks and what Rachel and her budget team and the rest of us worked through is we received our tax values on Monday, July 28th from all of the 3 different appraisal districts. We worked with Robin Garrett again this year to complete the state's tax worksheet, which is in your binder. And that worksheet was basically completed on August 5th and then executed by Robin, signed on the 5th. And at that point, we were able to complete the budget and publish the budget on August 5th. That's basically a week and a day after receiving those values to work through the worksheet itself, be able to establish what those no new revenue rates are, the voter approved rate is, and then complete the budget and then get it published. So this afternoon, as you see before you, we're going to cover the strategic priorities and budget framework, the budget development process, go through the details of the general fund budget, including the big picture, property taxes, other revenue sources, expenditures, and supplementals. We'll then cover the tax-backed debt fund, which is the other portion of our property tax rate. And then we will jump back into, from the previous workshop, just to follow up on the enterprise rate discussion that we had there. So with budget discussion, and then we will have a follow-up budget discussion is scheduled for August 25th, assuming that's necessary. And at that point, in between that, we'll follow up with any questions from tonight as well as during that meeting. So as we go through the budget process, we always start with our strategic priorities and our council retreat we held back in February, where we re-emphasize those priorities, also develop the milestones as a part of those. And so what we really wind up with is developing a budget that is strategic based. So now that strategic priorities, we've built those into the budget presentation and the budget book to ensure we are presenting the budget along the lines of those priorities. Of course, here we have the strategic priorities and how those stack together, all in an effort to make us the community of choice. So before jumping into the budget specifics, I did want to touch on some of the key strategic initiatives that have been completed, followed by some of the ongoing strategic priorities that continue to be the focus of not only this year's, but the FY26 budget. So the things major items completed in this past year under trusted government, we made major modifications to our agenda items. That was completed in May. We also, for the first time, rolled out a mid-range financial planning as part of our resilient finances, and we presented that during our early budget input session. We'll continue to do that annually as we move forward. And then in sustainable infrastructure, the evaluation of the drainage maintenance team after 2 years, so that was implemented, just making sure that that is on track, that the resources allocated there with the drainage team are doing what's intended. We presented that in March 2025. And then under connected community, the customer relationship management capabilities assessment was completed. Now we've stood up the customer experience team and have things in the next budget cycle that will help us continue with those efforts. So ongoing significant strategic initiatives under strong economy. We have the Old Town Revitalization Plan, which we expect to wrap up here in the next couple of months. We have the EDC's Infrastructure Recapitalization Program, which is a minimum of 20% of their revenues going towards infrastructure recapitalization in key areas of town. The update to the Unified Development Code, that will continue through the next year. And then again, our emphasis and pursuit of sports tourism. Under Safe Community, we continue to prosecute our large fire apparatus replacement plan, getting that fleet where it should be for the long term and having a good program in place for the long-term replacement of those. Next slide. Under Sustainable Infrastructure, we continue to complete the 2019 and 2023 bond programs. And just highlighting a couple of those major ones that got started this last year is the sidewalk gap and replacement project, as well as the 14 drainage projects included in the 2023 bond program. Under Connected Community, also in the bond program, are two major park. Phase 2 of those park programs are park expansions and improvements at Hickory Slough Sportsplex, as well as Independence Park. We continue to work through the design on Hickory Slough. With that, should be going to construction here in the next few months. And then Independence Park, the preliminary work to get to the detailed design work. Also, the Cultural Arts Master Plan implementation, and then our customer relationship management software and web update. We're continuing to work towards which direction we move in on that, and that's part of the FY26 budget. And then the Parks Master Plan update is also ongoing. So lots of ongoing significant strategic initiatives that we continue to work on as we work into the 26 budget. So following up on our People First initiatives and philosophy, we've developed this budget for FY26 that not only supports those ongoing strategic priorities that we identified in the last couple of slides, but also focuses on the residents and customer service portion of that, internal coordination that supports that customer service, other significant ongoing priorities, initiatives, and personnel that we funded in past years. Just making sure those things that we have started and have commenced in prior years that we've got the right amount of attention to those. We're also within this budget ensuring we attract and retain a highly qualified and trained workforce. And then we do have additional funds for street repairs in there as well. So kind of, the message from the council retreat and early budget input discussions we've had are, ensuring we have the right workforce. We're able to retain and attract that workforce, additional funds into the street funds, and then also working as close towards the no new revenue rate within that framework as possible. So at this point, I'm going to hand it over to Rachel Winslow, our head of office and management and budget, to get into the details this afternoon of the FY26 general fund budget. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for your time this afternoon. So we start today's discussion with what is a budget. The reason we have a 400-page budget is that it guides us as a policy document, a financial plan, an operations guide for our departments, and a communications device to our public. So here we have an overview of the budget process. Some changes that we made, I'll just hit on some of the highlights, included kicking off our departmental budget entry early in February in order to allow the departments to have 2 rounds of budget entry, as well as meet twice to discuss their budget to try and focus on accurate budgeting for the fiscal year 25 amended budget and the fiscal year 26 requested budget. This also allowed for feedback from the early budget input session to be incorporated into our budget process. For fiscal year 25 projections, this also involved using cost savings from departments to resolve some of the grant funds that were over budget, and as well as increasing the transfer to the facilities and IT capital holding funds. This allowed for some of the pending issues for fiscal year 26 to be resolved during the fiscal year 25 budget. As the cycle continued into July, we also incorporated council feedback and began our fiscal year 26 proposed budget discussions in July. This year, we brought all our non-property tax-related funds for discussion on July 14th, breaking the budget up into smaller chunks so that those funds not related to property taxes could be discussed first. And so then we're here today in August to discuss the general fund and property tax-backed funds, and we'll continue to discuss those throughout August before we reach September, where we'll adopt our budget, tax rate, the capital improvement plan, as well as non-development fees before starting the budget year on October 1st. So our budget year for fiscal year overview for fiscal year 26 includes our compensation changes. The following compensation changes are included. Year one of the meet and confer agreement for civil service employees. This includes salary changes effective on October 1st and April 1st for an overall effective 6% increase, as well as advancement through the STEP plan when eligible. For those on the fire pay plan, there is a market adjustment between 2 and 7% based on grade, as well as advancement through the STEP plan when eligible. This year, the fire marshal group was broken out into a separate pay plan. And then for employees that are not included on either the civil service or the fire pay plans, there's a 3% market adjustment and a 2% advancement through the range for a total adjustment of 5%. Here we have some staffing level comparisons across cities. This shows general government employees per 1,000 residents benchmarked across other cities that have similar size and or budget. While many cities may offer similar services, they may categorize them differently or not provide them at all, so not all comparisons are exact. For example, on this slide we have fire, but not all cities provide paid fire or EMS. For example, Friendswood and Pasadena are volunteer fire departments, and Missouri City does not provide their own EMS, so they are not shown on this slide. We'll just scroll through some of these other staffing level comparisons by grouping. For public works, cities such as Missouri City primarily outsource some of their utilities operations to utility districts. For community services, sometimes community services and parks are grouped together, so some cities may not appear on this slide or on this one for parks. And overall, this is the overall employees per 1,000 residents across multiple municipalities. So for what is not included in the general fund budget, we have not included an additional $3.67 million in street funding needed to maintain the transportation infrastructure. 121 general fund vehicles and or equipment met the eligible replacement criteria, but were not selected for replacement this year at an estimated $10.1 million replacement cost. Across all departments in general fund, there were personnel requests equivalent to $10.5 million, non-personnel requests excluding vehicles that were equivalent to $664,000, and we continued not to fund contributions to the capital replacement fund for the IT and facilities internal service funds. However, the overall big picture for the general fund is that we do have a balanced budget where annual revenues do exceed the operating costs, and we do meet the 25% fund policy minimum or 90 days of operating expenses. The anticipated ending fund balance for fiscal year 26 is $313,665 or $666 or 91 days of operations. For property taxes, our budget was built on the proposed property tax rate of 63 cents, of which 35 is for maintenance and operations and 0.278496 is for the debt rate. Here we show the actual 2025 rates in the amended budget, as well as the potential property tax impacts of the proposed tax rate, the no new revenue rate, or the voter approved rate. Including the TERS administration fee for FY26, our proposed budget is 63.5. The certified taxable values by county are shown here, and these include all frozen values. And then on the next slide, we have the adjusted taxable values for FY26 broken out by the city's taxable roll and the TERS. Our property tax rate is shown here, and we continue on a decreasing property tax rate going from 63.5 cents last year to 63 cents in the proposed fiscal year 26 budget. A general property tax bill comparison is shown here for median home value. In this case, the city of Pearland at the proposed budget will take up 32% of the proposed tax bill, and the resident will actually see a $12 decrease. What does 1 cent equal? For our O&M property taxes, 1 cent is roughly equivalent to 1.4 million, or $3.02 per month for the median homestead taxable value, and a half cent would be equivalent to $683,000, or $1.51 per month. Our revenue highlights for the general fund. This includes all revenue sources for the general fund, as well as changes from the amended fiscal year 25 budget. Property taxes include the revenue from penalties and interest, as well as any potential prior year collections, in addition to the increased O&M rate. Licenses and permits, which is seeing a large revenue increase, is increasing due to the trend. For fiscal year 25, we've already exceeded the amended budget, and based off of estimated permits, we believe the $4 million in permit revenue is a reasonable assumption. We'll continue to monitor that throughout FY26 and make adjustments as needed. The sales and use tax increase includes the mixed drink tax, and while that remains relatively flat for fiscal year 26, the sales tax is estimated at a 4.5% increase. Charges for services is primarily made up of the TERS administrative fee and departmental charges for services, including EMS and parks. Miscellaneous revenue in fiscal year 25 included the one-time cash infusion from MUD 16 annexation and will not be continuing in fiscal year 26. Sales tax revenue continues to perform well, with our projection for FY26 being $47.5 million. Those two light colors are estimates for the remaining months, and our fiscal year 26 budget is built with that 4.5% sales tax growth over the fiscal year 25 amended budget. So that's $32.6 million for fiscal year 26, which is equivalent to 24.6% of the general fund total revenue. Overall, in general fund, 81% of revenue comes from three main revenue streams, which includes our property taxes, sales and use taxes, and charges for services, while all those other revenues categories combine to form other, which is shown in green. For our general fund expenditures, we continue to have that balanced budget as well as positive ratings through the ratings agencies. Here we have a slide that shows our general fund expenditures by strategic priority. Here we see that this year we made a concentrated effort to align our budget with those strategic priorities, and for fiscal year 26, there are increases across most of those categories. Sustainable infrastructure increases represent the increased investment in streets and sidewalks. For the expenditures by category, salaries and wages is the largest expense category in the fiscal year 26 budget, and includes not only salaries and overtime, but also health insurance and retirement and all costs associated with employee payroll. Internal service fund transfers include transfers out to maintain the risk fund, motor pool, facilities, and IT fund. These transfers are seen in the administration division of departments. Other categories are staying flat or seeing a decrease. Buildings and grounds sees an increase in fiscal year 26 due to the incorporation of the Infrastructure Reinvestment Fund into the Public Works Street Division. Formerly, the transfer out to support that program was part of the general transfers out category and is now reflected in buildings and grounds. The supplementals included in the fiscal year 26 budget by strategic priority include a paralegal, estimated to cost $71,794, and in sustainable infrastructure, an additional $500,000 for streets and sidewalks, increasing that overall budget for street and sidewalk contracted repair to $2.3 million. in addition to the streets crew that is also budgeted in that division. And then the assistant city manager, which is estimated to cost about $280 something thousand dollars, sorry. And 1/3 of that will be budgeted out of general fund, and the rest will be reimbursed from the CIP and or enterprise fund. And then in resilient finances, we have an accountant and a purchasing officer, both to support the capital improvement plan. So those positions are net neutral impact to the general fund as they are fully reimbursable. Switching to our tax-backed debt fund for fiscal year 26, this is where the city budgets the revenue and expenditures to pay all the tax-backed debt. So it pays for non-enterprise fund debt issuances as well as the MUD rebates. And so our tax rate has overall two components, and this is where the debt rate component goes at 0.278496. And our estimated current taxes with frozen values is $38 million, and the total estimated property tax revenue for the debt service fund is estimated to be at $38.5 million. Shown here is just a snapshot of our overall fund summary for this fund, and we do continue to meet our fund policy minimum requirements of 10% of our overall debt payments for the year. And that line that shows interest expense is both interest and principal payments. So now we'll transition to the enterprise fund just to talk about the two different rate options and the updates that were made there. So we have updated the rate model since the last time we talked. We restructured some of the debt, revised some of the MUD payments, and modified the annual capital improvement plan schedule. So this resulted in some minor modifications to the future years, fiscal year 27 and beyond, in both the 5.5% and the 7% rate change scenario, which is shown on the next slide. Overall, the budget is built with the proposed 5.5% rate change. And then finally, before I turn it back over to Mr. Epperson, our next steps include our potential budget discussion number 4 on August 25th, and then we'll return on September 8th for the first reading of the budget, the tax rate, and the non-development fees, as well as the adoption of the capital improvement plan, and then on 9/22nd, the second reading of the fiscal year 26 budget, tax rate, and non-development fees. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Winslow. Mayor, before we open up discussion, just want to say many thanks to Rachel, her budget team, plus all the department heads and their teams that are here this afternoon, and those that aren't here, that have worked hand in hand and very hard through this budget process with the budget office, with the city manager's office, to ensure that we can deliver the expectations that our community expects and do that within a balanced budget that's presented here tonight. Additionally, I want to cover just real briefly, we got 2 budget-related items on the agenda tonight. We're going to be setting the public hearing dates that Rachel just mentioned for the budget, as well as setting the dates the budget will be on the agenda. And then that'll be followed by a second item where we set the public hearing on the tax rate and then establish the maximum tax rate and sets the dates the tax rate will be on the agenda. The recommended maximum tax rate is 0.5 cent higher than the recommended budget. And it matches the current tax rate of 63.5 cents. And what that does, if we set it there, it allows, as we go through our budget discussion, some capacity if there is a desire to add any additional services or priorities to the budget, such as street funds or any positions. So with that, Mayor, hand it back to you and the council for any questions and discussion.
Right.
Thank you.
Good. It's good to see everybody here today. Thank you all for this exciting discussion about budgets. I know it's always riveting as we come in and have this discussion. No, all kidding aside, we can't do what we do without the people that are in this room, as well as the rest of the staff that's across this city. A lot of times we get accolades for the great things that we do, and it's you guys that are doing it. So I want to thank you for not only being here, but also being here with the city and what you mean to us. One thing, it's just going to make a comment when I look at the overall tax rate that's being proposed of 63 cents, and I look at what's going to debt service and what's going to the general fund. I think this is the first time in many, many years. I think the current rates are just not quite 50-50, but probably 48-52. But here we've got, 55% of our budget going into general fund. I would dare say it's been 15 plus years in the making to get back to that type of a spread versus where we were. So it's good to see us trending in that direction overall. So with that, I'll turn it over to council for questions, comments in this budget workshop. Mr. Carbone?
Thank you, Mayor. Just to follow up on that, on the TERS, what's that admin fee percentage? And I guess
35, I think.
So are you saying, how does that work? What do we get back, basically, the percentage-wise?
right, as it relates to the mayor's comments in terms of O&M to debt service.
Sure. So instead of the tax rate being split on the TERS value, 100% of the 100% of the tax rate is collected for the incremental value in the TERS. That all goes into the TERS, and then there's a calculation of how much comes back directly into the general fund. And right now it's about 58%. Just confirming, 58% of the total amount is coming back into the general fund,
Okay.
while the rest remains in the TERS to pay off the TERS projects.
I guess in the perfect world, that 58 ends up being the 58-42 split that we'd be O&M to debt service for when that rolls off in 29.
Yeah, I think if we're in that range, it'll lessen the impact. I do know that our debt service rate at that point will drop, and so that'll change the ratio in and of itself. But ensuring that that it works within the context of that and the tax rate worksheet is something we're really watching. And much like last year, we're also asking Robin to run our tax rate worksheet as if the TERS ended this year, so we understand what that impact looks like, so we can start, understanding what that actually will look like in 2029, so we know if there's any adjustments we need to work towards as the TERS ends.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely something we need to have a good handle on as it moves forward. Ms. Chavarria?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you so much for the presentation. So I have a question. If we were to sustain at the current tax rate, how much funding would be available to, say, invest in more roads? Because we should be investing $5.9 million a year, and we're not even close to that. Thank you.
It'd be, I think, so in other words, if we kept it at 63.5 versus the proposed 63 cents, what's the additional?
We would get about an additional 700,000.
That's the question you were looking
Thank
for?
you.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Mr. Patel? See you.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you go back to, I think, slide 17, when you were comparing the cities? I guess all these comparisons you're doing, if you can, Rachel, can you give us a valuation of what the city's valuations are, I guess taxing values, and break them down by two, residential and commercial? I think it's important to understand some of these, like Beaumont, for example, has substantial amount of commercial value on the ground. And obviously most of us know about Friendswood is mostly residential, right? And so I think that will kind of put a lot of things in perspective about where we are in comparison to not just comparing the city by population, but also by taxing values. Also, I guess, what is our plan if there's a shortfall? Can you go back to the slide? I believe it was showing where all the revenues are coming in from. And I know you said there was a
33.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Slide 33. So what is the contingency plan if some of these numbers have a significant reduction? Let's assume, and I'm sure all you guys are paying attention to what's happening and I guess layoffs are coming, and I guess the grim look for the next 12 months, at least in our industry, is not that great. And so if we have this dip, what is our contingency and where we're going to plan to cut and bring our revenues, if we don't hit it, where are the expenses going to be cut from? So I guess I would like to understand your, let's say if we have a 10% drop in our revenues, God forbid, let's hope that doesn't happen. But if it does, that's a significant amount. I know I wasn't here on the first budget meeting, so I'm going to make some comments on that. I know we're proposing additional personnel in the EDC, and I'll ask this board. I think one of the things I had asked and Trent had provided was the job descriptions for the people that we want to additionally hire and the current workforce that we have in that department. And I think it's important that we consider being more efficient in that area and use that money for the roads that you may want. I think we could spread some of that money. When you look at their budget, the amount of incentives, I know we got this 5-year forecast and they say, their balance fund will be negative. And I've seen that forecast for 15 years since I've been on there. Every 5 years I get this forecast that shows a grim look at their fund balance. I haven't seen it yet in 15 years. And I think it's important to understand that we may want to consider kind of tightening our belts before it's too late. And so I think it's important to understand from our perspective sitting on this council, what are we going to do? Where are we going to put the cuts if it happens? And that I haven't seen, and I would like to see that if you guys are interested.
Any other questions, comments, or Trent, do you want to respond to that, or do you want to take some time and get back with that?
I think maybe for a comprehensive response, we'd take a little time, and take a look at of the revenues here, which are ones that would be subject to potentially something like that, and if we did drop 10% in those, what that would look like. We do carry a significant fund balance. If we were to see something like that we could rely upon as we start to pull back on some of the expenditures at the same time. And I think that's two places we would start. But I think if we can, provide a more comprehensive response as part of the budget process, we can spend some more time on that. We have spent a lot of time over this past budget year, and I think all the departments have been asked to really scrutinize their expenditures and expenses, and where we, often take a look at here's what we would spend in an ideal world, and then as the actual world starts to happen, you can't get to all those things, or all the bad things you potentially plan for don't happen, and there's some additional funds there. We've squeezed a lot of that out of our budget, and that's the next place we would go to is are there additional places like that we could go to work on? And then, as far as the EDC and additional funds towards roads, we've got that minimum 20% requirement. I believe with some of the projects we're adding in the latter couple of years of that 5-year plan, we're actually pushing up against 30+% of that. If Matt could confirm that, Matt?
Yeah, I don't have the number right off the top of my head, but it's that, close to that.
So other than that, we'll provide some more response.
Yeah, and I looking, here, I was on this council in 2008 when the market and real estate and everything else literally crashed overnight. I'll never forget it because we had Hurricane Ike on Friday night to Saturday morning, and Lehman Brothers filed for bankruptcy on Monday. So we had both a hurricane and a housing collapse all in the same weekend. That was an interesting emergency meeting come Monday night as we discussed through that. But to your point, Mr. Patel, that was one of those moments where, there were some foreshadowing of a real estate that was over leveraged and could collapse, and of course it did. And it was one of those moments where literally staff, council, everyone involved, you work through to number one, deliver essential services, police, fire, public works, immediately making sure that we kept that going. But at the same time, looking for any and all ways to, from hiring freezes to, and think about it, in '08, our growth rate today is single digits. Our growth rate in '08 was in double digits. So that, I would say, even with the market downturn, the growth rate that we were experiencing probably helped us through that, which was different than what we have today. But what did come about as a result of that was the foreclosure market. I mean, foreclosures went through the roof because it was people who were over leveraged on their homes with I forget, variable interest rates. Yeah, and multiple at that. That got literally dangling over a cliff and couldn't hang on anymore. But to your point, it was an all hands on deck, looking at everything that we could, from fund balance to to things that we could, just like we do in any of these budgets, like we did a couple of years ago. Are there things that we can move out a year? Are there things that we can move out 2 years? And yes, we might not get to as many roadways this year, but do we move those things out? I mean, I think all of those discussions end up on the table, and have those discussions as you work through it. But to your point, it's good to have a contingency. It's good to have something in the back of your mind that if we do, have a problem. I was going to ask the question, Rachel, about sales tax on slide 33. I know that was the one number on that slide that jumped out to me. I get the licensing and permits, and I even get the miscellaneous, turning down. But the 4%, budgeting a 4.5% increase in sales and use tax, what was a number that I was going to ask you to explain that in further detail, how we came to that number.
Right.
That's
So-
the one that bothers me.
Understandable. We've been pretty cautious in our sales tax forecasting, but we have continued to exceed our sales tax forecast. Through July, we're still at about 5.5% growth currently from the prior year, and we have not seen those indicators that our sales tax is declining. We had about 1 month a few months ago where it was a little low, but we have overall continued to see a 5.5% growth rate.
Matt, what are you projecting in your budget? I remember seeing it. I just don't have it in front of me as your projection.
We did 2%, Mayor.
Okay. I think that.
So just to put those two things in perspective, when the EDC was looking at that, it was how many months ago?
Oh, it's March.
March. Yeah. So they were looking at that in March, and we've seen that sales tax revenue continue to tick up month over month, really over the last 5+ months. And so that's why we looked at a higher rate as we go through our budget process. And just kind of to address that, and as well as the earlier question, we do our monthly budget variance report. It'll give us any early indications if we're seeing issues with revenues or anything like that. And then we also have the opportunities, with the Budget Amendment 1 and Budget Amendment 2, if we see anything start to occur that we can, that's the point where we can always actually adjust the budget based on what we're seeing, although we probably have pulled the internal levers to deal with those things internally before we actually do those amendments, if we see some faltering in revenues or any issues with the broader economy.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Excuse me. I mean, I don't mind if Member Koza wants to go first.
I was going to toggle back and forth.
Yeah. I have a few different questions, just kind of trying to help me understand some of this. And feel free to say, let's schedule a meeting and talk a little bit more if we need to. But it's not part of the presentation, but the tax rate worksheet itself. Line item, do y'all have that handy by chance, or do we need to talk about the tax rate worksheet later? Page 3.
I think we can at least take the question as far as,
Sure.
so we can come back and answer it.
Okay. It's basically two questions based off the tax rate worksheet. Item number 21 says anticipated contested value, and it's at 0. Is that because we're broke up across 3 different counties and none of them exceed 500,000, so we don't have an anticipated contested value line item there.
So I may see if Victor can help me out with this, but I believe that number is given directly to us from the different central appraisal districts, and let me see.
Is that basically saying that they don't anticipate much contest on the values?
So it also references being wholly or partially located in a county that has a population of less than 500,000 and located in the Gulf of Mexico.
Right. That's why I'm
Yeah.
assuming there's nothing.
So, yeah, there would be nothing there coming from what the taxing, from the appraisal districts provide to us that go in that line.
Okay. My second question is 22 versus 26 on the same page. Current year total taxable value, 12.5 million or billion. That's what we're basing our budget off of. And so I'm curious why we base it off the 12.5 and not the adjusted current year taxable value of the 12.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we do base it off the current year, which is next year for us, next fiscal year.
Okay, so the 12 would be current fiscal year, the 12.5 would be next fiscal year.
Mhm.
I understand. I appreciate it. This thing is bizarre to go through, just to be fair. So,
Let me make a quick statement on that, if you're okay with that. This is designed by the state of Texas, a conservative state that would probably be the envy of the IRS if they got a hold of it. And with the current tax forms, IRS would be envious of this, so anyway.
Yeah, so maybe just, so you were looking at 22 versus 26?
6. Yes, sir.
So what that does is it gives us our current year taxable value at 22. They back out new improvements, and then areas annexed. So that is new value and annexation. So that backs out 204 for the annexation of MUD 16, and then we had about 230 in new value. So they back those two numbers out to arrive at the 12. So that's how they compare this year to last year to arrive at that no new revenue. So that's calculation. The sole purpose for that calculation is arrive at the no new revenue tax rate.
Okay. Thank you for helping me better understand those line items. On the summary from the budget book, which is page 9, your executive summary, it talks about a 5% increase for non-public safety staff, 3% market, 2% advancement, 3% market. That's essentially COLA. Is that basically the same thing?
So it's a market adjustment to our overall pay rates to try to keep everybody up with the market. So if you want, I mean, it's akin to a cost of living
Okay.
adjustment.
Yeah. So they're roughly the same thing. Okay. And then my last question is page 12 of same document. Ending fund balance proposed fiscal year 26 budget, approximately 313,666 above our 90-day minimum. If we were looking for opportunities to put possibly some more funding, Member Chavria's point, into roads, is that 300 also something we could pull from? Because it would be above our 90-day minimum. I know it'd be pushing us up against the edge.
Right. That would, pull us down to just above the required minimum if we were to expend those dollars.
But that's accessible funds.
That's available. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Koza?
Thank you, Mayor. Could you pull up on the water rates? All right, so in my 4-year tenure here, it always seems that the year after the year you're looking at, the rates have dropped considerably. And looking at just this, I don't know what what has transpired, but on the 5.5 in 26 to 16.7 now in 27, at our last meeting, it was 17%, so it's come down 0.3%. What changed? What did we move out, or what did we?
Yeah, so we actually were requested and reprofiled some of our debt. So we worked with our financial advisor, Mr. Roebuck, to look at some of our water, wastewater debt in those future years and reprofile it. And we also worked with our capital improvement plan group and with Pearland Water to look at the 5-year capital improvement plan and also move some of those projects around as much as possible in order to try and bring that down in 27. But what's impacting the 2027 rate will be what we sell in 2026. And a big chunk of that is Berry Rose and Longwood. So that's not very flexible.
Right.
But we were able to move some other projects.
Yeah, when I saw that, because even on the 7%, rate, if you were to move to that one, it dropped about a point. Down, and I know the Berry Rose is a big debt sale, so I understand that that's going to be pretty much stuck with that. But I was just curious what had changed. So it's basically moving some of the debt around and moving some of the projects around, is what you said. All right, fair enough. And then we had talked about, I guess there were several folks last meeting had a interest in the $409,000 on the hydrant crew. And I'd sent in a supplemental with that on it if you want to pull it up. But what I wanted to ask, as far as businesses in our city, we're required to have an annual inspection every year. And what my question is, if we were to look at, I also sent in, we had just recently, within the last 2 or 3 meetings, approved the Firetron contract for being able to inspect our buildings and stuff like that. And wanted to find out at our last meeting, I think the number is 5,400. David can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was 5,400 hydrants that we have. And looking at the contract, if you go down to the services provided in the different things, one of the things they do is they inspect the risers and the valves that are in it. Would a company like Firetron or any other company in that space be able to inspect fire hydrants? Because if we were to break it down on an annual basis, it'd be about 20 fire hydrants a day, Monday through Friday. And I'm curious I think if my memory serves me correctly, the $409,000, about half of it in this supplemental was half truck and trailer, with the other half for two new employees, but with requests for future employees to be in that space. So I assume if 2 are costing $200,000, if we added 2 more a year from now or 2 years from now, we'd be back at $400,000. I'm kind of curious to see, one, if a company like Firetron does or would inspect fire hydrants at 20 a day. I think it's feasible to have some company do that. What the cost would be, would it be $200,000? If we had 4 folks in that space, $400,000.
Sure. So a couple things. I think it's 3 people with the team initially.
3? Okay.
Yes, sir. And the trailer and the truck. And then, they're not only just inspecting them, but they're also making the repairs as well. So I think I did see a head nod that companies potentially do inspect and make those repairs as well. So there's potentially someone that can do that as well.
I mean, I was just curious, to see what that comparison would be. I know we're, in the throes of budget right now, and it's a tight time constraint. But, to me, if we have somebody inspecting our facilities right now, what's the difference between a fire hydrant and a facility?
Sure. I mean, I think we'd have to outsource not only the inspections but the repairs if we were to not fund the crew. Because right now, we've got a long inspection list, and we only repair as we're able to break the crews loose from main breaks and the other daily
Correct.
work that they have to do.
Right.
The other piece of that is it also included a program. Other part of the program would be that they would be inspecting and exercising. I think it's over 13,000 valves annually as well. So that was the other part of what that crew would do. So, I mean, we can take a look at what the options are, but I think, for long-term, from a standpoint of what bringing somebody in to do that, I would expect that we would be able to do it for a better long-term cost. But we can take a look.
Well, like I said, it was just something that crossed my mind because
Sure.
I can tell you through my experience with my sprinkler system, us as a citizen, as a business, we can't touch it because it's fire related. It has to go through our sprinkler system company. So, I'm not up to how municipalities handle their stuff, but I had a simple drain line on a compressor that I couldn't have a plumber do. I had to have the sprinkler system come out.
On our public water system, we've got the people with the proper, state credentials to be able to do all the work on those.
Well, I understand that, but I mean, a licensed plumber that runs a drain line that doesn't do anything besides drain water, is interesting to me. And then one other question that I had, we were also, it's about 2 years ago, we had a company called Brycer that we utilized to follow up with inspections. Is the city subject to having those same type of reminders and notifications?
Yes, I believe Firetron, when they do our inspections, they do get uploaded into Brycer.
That is.
I got a thumbs up.
Okay. That's what I was just curious. All right. Thank you.
Mr. Fernandez?
Thank you, Mayor. Trent, I've got two questions. The first one, and just help me understand, obviously being a new member on council, on the water rates, the 5% proposal and the 7% proposal. Is there any better way to calculate the proposed rate over the next couple of years? I know I just heard recently that, it's calculated. There's a lot of moving parts to this. I know that it depends on water and, how wet the season is. And but for me, when I look at a 5.5 and a 7.5, immediately I think to myself, sure, I would love for the residents of Pearland to pay 5.5. Living here also, I would love to to pay 5.5. But when I see the spike of 16.7, or looking down at the 7% proposal rate and looking at 2027 at 13.6, I'm just trying to better understand why it spikes and then it drops down to 2 for 29 and 30. So that's my first question.
Sure. So the model we use that generates these estimates for the futures is fairly complex. It takes into account a lot of different factors. We utilize trends for the amount of water we expect to be used. We use a growth rate for additional water users, and then the big driver that we've seen in the most recent years is the capital projects and the debt service associated with those. So we've built the surface water treatment plant. We basically reconstructed the JHEC wastewater treatment plant. And now we're basically, we are replacing the Berry Rose and the Longwood wastewater treatment plant. So that's a very capital intensive program over a short period of years that, we staved off for many, many years when you saw those 0% increases in our rates. So what you see there is that big jump is when the next big tranche of debt has to be sold to complete the Berry Rose and Longwood projects. And then you see that trend down in the future because basically as you make those increases, you see the compounding effect on the actual revenues in the next couple of years after that. And then and so we've taken on that debt and we're not taking on a significant amount of debt in the future years beyond that because we're into more of our lift station rehab and water line replacement programs that aren't that do not come with the very sizable cost of doing plant work And so as we get into that type of work, we're not adding debt to at the same rate. And so as the revenues compound with the rate increases over the year, we're able to catch up to where you see those much smaller increases in the future. So Rachel, are there other major drivers in the model that I'm not, that I didn't hit upon?
Not that are in the model itself, but we're also really impacted by this current year, which won't wrap up until the end of September. If we meet our revenue target or exceed our revenue target for the year, last year our revenues were higher than projected, so that had a positive impact on the FY26 proposed rate. It's been a very wet summer, so who knows if we'll meet or exceed our revenue for this year. But he hit on all the factors that are basically impacting the model, and then as we progress through time, those unknown current events also have an impact, and that's why from year to year they might not line up.
Another thing to look at are the two bottom lines: the water and sewer unreserved working capital at 15%, and then the combined reserve fund. Both of those have targets to hit. And that's really for our bond council and rating agencies and all those kind of things.
Now, I would add one more thing just about the rate model itself. We did have that validated by a third-party company, 3 years ago, thereabouts, just to verify that it is providing us what we expect and what we need from a rate model standpoint. They came back and said, yes, it's good. They validated the model basically. And while, in past years we have seen what the projections are, that's based on what the expectation of what we'll sell in debt that following year, how much water we'll sell based on just an average trend over the years. And then again, if we sell less debt that year because projects don't progress as quickly as planned, or it's a very dry year and we have a lot more in revenues, then that'll impact the next year by bringing that rate increase down. If we sell all the debt program for this year, because we do have an ongoing project that most of it is planned for with the Berry Rose Longwood project, and we continue to have a wet year, we probably will not see as much of a downward trend in what's projected next year. We are looking at one other way to maybe address that. And I don't know if, Victor, you want to speak to what we're looking at from a fund balance standpoint that we're going to look at and then potentially present to the audit committee as we move forward. But we've got some work to do. We can't really do that at this point. But
yes, thank you, Mayor. You're quite right. One of the other major controlling factors in the model is the impact of the reserve funds and our current policies with that regard. We believe there is scope to revise that. Now, the caveat I would put in that is the bond rating agencies love liquidity, pardon the pun, in the water fund. And they would wish us to have even more cash set aside.
Gold makes the rules.
Yeah. They would have more cash set aside to satisfy the interests of bondholders. So any changes we make by way of reducing the amount set aside would probably find some disfavor with them. So the balance, again, pardon the pun, we would have to strike is whether we reduce the fund balance to give the customers a little bit of relief or satisfy the bond rating agencies. That's the balance. But there is certainly merit in looking at it, Mayor.
Okay. Oh,
I got one more question.
that's right.
So my last question is, I know that looking at this budget book and we're running a tight ship, only 12 and a half positions are being proposed. Most of those in the enterprise fund. I know the tax rate proposal is the 63. Looking ahead, how do we tackle, what's the plan that we're tackling when we are considering a fire station number 7? And I know that we are heavily looking at the grant, but that grant's only for 3 years. So when the 3 years is up, how do we absorb upwards of 26 employees if it's fully staffed. Now, I understand that we could be rolling it out slower, but how do we do that when we're running a super tight ship today?
Sure. So if we were to get the SAFER grant, we could move forward on the schedule we had planned. And then basically, as you said, we would have 3 years to, plan to absorb those additional personnel costs over those 3 years. So feasible, still tight, but probably feasible over the 3 years. Trying to absorb that all at once over a year without the SAFER grant would be extremely difficult. The constraints the state has put on us makes that very difficult. I think, if we were to do that, we would have to have the backing to really ramp up where we take the tax rate in relationship to the no new revenue rate. We'd probably be definitely bumping up against the voter approval rate at that point.
And the reason I ask is because we're looking ahead, the need of that fire station is there. Now the question is how do we pay for it? And what do we do today to, pave the way to be more prepared for it in year 4? So thank you.
Just to follow up on that, when is the SAFER grant expected? Joel, do you have a rough estimate when we're expected to hear on that?
No, sir, not right now. The application process was delayed. So I would say maybe 3 months out from where it would normally fall. So I don't see any awards being made right now. I just checked as the discussion was taking place. So maybe October.
Okay. Ms. Kate? I'll come back.
Thank you, Mayor. It's on page 258. I don't know if this is for Rachel or for Carrie, but there's some charges in the past for things like service athletic programs, service athletic leagues that they don't have. There's nothing in the budget column for this year. And then moving down, where's the one I really wanted to ask you about? Hickory Slough RSA. I've lost it, but it's in here somewhere.
So I will also let Carrie answer, but through their development of their budget this year, they just moved some revenue accounts around between divisions so that revenue might be located just on another page in a different account. Oh, it is actually. So that charges for services Hickory Slough was formerly in athletics, and now, I will let Carrie answer.
No, thank you, Rachel. So Rachel is correct. What we're working on is moving some of our accounts around because one of the questions that was difficult for us to answer is what is our cost recovery for our athletic complexes? And so we're breaking out our parks division. And so some of the expenses related to parks will be moving to athletics, and then some of the revenue, all of the revenue that we generate related to our athletic field rentals is moving in, or will stay in athletics. And then our athletic leagues, those are moving to our recreation division. That way we can see the difference and be more transparent with how we report those numbers. And then some of the questions, like the specific question that you had in regards to the RSAs, with the recent policy updates that we added or that we made, and we created the PA category, that partner associations, some of our recognized sports associations are now classified as a partner association, so that revenue will be shifting into some of those different categories.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Coming back, Ms. Chavaret.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question on page 45, or slide 45. So the combined reserved fund 600 and 601, are we on target to meet that 50%? So the 50% that you combined, the 600 and 601.
It is, for fiscal year 25?
For 25, are we
That's
on
currently what we're projected at. That's the amended budget.
Mm-hmm.
So we won't know until we hit year end what that actually is.
Okay.
But yes, that is the current projection for that. And then what would have been driving that in fiscal year 25 would have been the 15% working capital.
Okay, because I'm, I'm not on board with the 2027 and 2028 at 16.7 and 9.6. I just don't think that that is something that some people that are on fixed incomes, I think of the elderly, I just really am concerned about that. And I do know that these are projections, and I understand that, but I am concerned with the rate model at 5.5. Thank you.
And just real quick, Rachel, on the 50%, we set that with budget amendment number 2. That was in what, May or June?
Because we don't change our rates mid-year, we don't usually bring those two ratios back, but that is a result of Budget Amendment 2 and how FY24 finished.
Okay.
Like I said, we exceeded our revenue projections for fiscal year 24, and we were a little low also on our expenditures. So FY25, we really saw some of the potential benefits of that.
Okay. All right, back around for number 2, Mr. Patel.
Thank you, Mayor. So Rachel, what is our policy? Is it 25%, 15 and 25%? Is that right? On the two percentages you're showing, what is the policy?
Yes, that's correct.
15 and 25. So you're predicting we're going to lose $10 million, or we're going to, I guess, dip into our reserves for the losses, correct, for next year if we do a 5.5%?
That's just revenue over expenditure. So yes, we will use our reserves in order to meet those ratios.
Okay. And
That's,
sorry.
just want to clarify, that's because our reserves exceed our minimum.
Agree.
Yes.
I understand. Yes, sir. I understand. Okay. And I guess in 27, it will dip in 5 million, 4.937 million again, and then you'll be right at threshold, assuming all things stay fair, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And I guess, Victor, the question I have, you mentioned that we could discuss or look at bond and adjusting our reserves. Have the bonds already been sold, or will the bonds, are you talking about future bonds? Which one are we talking about doing this for?
Yeah, I'm talking about the impact on future bonds, potentially.
Yeah, we
Okay,
sold
so-
bonds too.
So if we reduce our reserves now, how does that impact our bonds that have already been sold?
So as long as we maintain the minimums that we've set, that shouldn't change. The issue is going forward, if we reduce our fund balance policy, and I'm not saying we know for sure what the rating agencies would do, but given their fixation on liquidity in the fund, I would suggest there's a risk at least that they would downgrade.
And I guess the downgrade, the question then would be, how much bibs are we talking about?
Precisely,
right?
precisely that.
Yeah, and I guess if it's within 50 bibs or 50, half a percent,
Right.
is it worth it, right? Is the cost worth it? Because you're just sitting on a bunch of cash that you can't deploy.
Precisely.
And so I guess my question to this counselor would be, look at our options, and I think that's what we're looking for, is to say how much lower do we feel comfortable with? Because 25% is a lot of money you're sitting on. I mean, I don't know what our return is. What is it, 4%? So, I mean, we're probably paying, how much are we paying, 4.5%?
About 4.5 on current bonds.
Yeah, so I mean, even if we go on 5% and drop that to 15 or 10, even pushing it, I mean, that may be a little, but again, I mean, I think there's a lot of play there, because I think you could bring that percentage of your rates down significantly then.
Yeah, I think, and to your point, I think it's all a calculated risk on our part, but I think we can get out in front of the rating agencies by asking the questions, not when we're up against a bond sale, but asking
Right.
it now versus, when we're.
And, working with Roebuck, working with rating agencies, that's, what we want to analyze over this next year and see, and then make a recommendation on that based on how do we think it'll impact future borrowing. Once we get past this next year's debt sale, our debt will be selling over the subsequent years drops significantly as well, which means it may not be as important to keep the rating where it has been, and then utilize that cash that we've been sitting on to help mitigate some of the future costs for our customers and ratepayers. So we want to do the analysis, see what we think, how that really affects things, and then make a recommendation. And
Even
we'll
in
bring that to the
2027,
audit committee.
I'm glad to see the 16 and 16.7 has come down from, what was it, 17, 17.1, something like that. just by restructuring a little bit on our debt sales, being able to come down. But to Mr. Patel's point, we go through this exercise, we might see that 16, drop to 12. That's literally pluck that out of the air, but that's way better than 16%. So, and then in subsequent years, we may see that 9.5, 9.6 drop in half, and off we go. I still go back to if we know we're going to have some years at or around 0 or 1, there still, I think, needs to be some minimum increase to have there, even if it's paying for projects out of cash as opposed to debt. That would be, I think, better off than selling the debt and going to a 0. I forget the slide that we've had in previous presentations where out of the last 15 years we've had like half of them at 0%, and had we charged the 2 or 3%, we would still have some spikes that just wouldn't be as high of a spike. And so trying to figure this out, it's obviously iterative. We learn as we go. Even this, we have 2 years on the back end. Previously, we don't have as much of a outer year look than we've had. This is only the last couple of years we've been able to push those years out.
Right. I think we're wanting to bring that recommendation to the audit committee as well, of that minimum increase, even if you don't, the model doesn't say to. We just haven't put a whole lot of time into that, knowing we had these kind of increases over the last couple of years. But as part of this analysis, we'll bring that to the audit committee as well.
Other questions? Be back, Mr. Arbone.
All right. I guess to continue with the rate model, I understand what Chevrolet was saying. You don't want to hit fixed income with 16.7 and 27, so you'd rather hit them with 7 this year instead of 5.5. Well, we didn't agree on this year's last year. These are just all models, and so I guess we should give staff some direction, I would think, tonight. I guess looking back, I like that we brought this forward in the discussions from a calendar standpoint, but I would ask staff this time next year, push us for a decision. There's a lot of talk up here that we had all this similar data 2 or 3 weeks ago. So just to make the process more efficient, but whether it's 5.5 or 7, I think we need to give them some direction tonight. If you would go back to slide 30, this is the property tax bill. I think in the past we pulled out several other examples and then also had some small business, because this one doesn't look bad, but for as many as these are, with the new homestead caps and the circuit breakers and all that, it'd be interesting to see what the effects are for real bills. If you go to
and to your point, our highest overall taxing area is in Harris County, Pasadena ISD. They're also in a MUD. And so, it's a small area of our community, but it is the most impacted because in addition to these, they've got port fees, they've got all that other stuff as you see it. So it'd be interesting to see those different jurisdictions displayed on here as well. Sorry to interrupt there.
And then on page 22 of the budget itself, I guess the 400-page budget, it references the financial policies. It says, please see the appendix for additional information regarding the financial policies. I don't think those policies are in the appendix. So either get rid of the language or add it in the appendix.
Yes, it was supposed to be a link, so we'll get rid of it.
Okay. And then also, starting on page 405 of the appendix, it goes through the pay plans. And specifically on 405, it says, COP pay plan, all positions excluding civil service. But I don't see all the positions on there. i.e. some of the upper level directors, city management. I mean, it's all public record anyway. So I guess if we're going to say it's all paid, then let's put it. If not, let's asterisk and why aren't we showing it? I guess next up, so we made some benefit changes or policy changes this year. I'd like to see the budget impact for military pay counting as overtime, any mandatory recall paid as overtime, and then special events. Just to see what that budgetary impact would be if we went back and counted that as hours worked or whatever lingo it is. And if I'm alone, that's cool. Don't do it. But if there's anybody else that at least wants to see the numbers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did we understand the request? So can you maybe walk back through what being requested?
Military pay, mandatory recall and special event counting as overtime. I guess the last thing in regards to sales tax, I understand the EDC's budget was done earlier in the year, but that rolls up to our budget. And so it seems like we're going to pass a budget that says we think sales tax is going to go 2%, but we also think it's going to go 4%. So somehow I think we need to document that. So 6 months from now, when somebody picks this up as a communication tool, they look at it and like, wait, hold on. The EDC ironically says we're only going to grow at 2%, yet the general fund, we're saying 4%. I understand through the discussion today, but I don't know, somehow I think we should document that better.
We can footnote that in the budget.
And that's all I had.
Okay. Mr. Coz, Ms. Cade, we'll do Ms. Cade.
Mr. Carbone, can I get some clarification? So on the military leave, mandatory recall, special event,
Yep.
Are you saying if that employee had taken like vacation or sick time, but
Right.
those were always counted as overtime?
Correct. Like if there's special event, that should,
Even if it's their normal hours to work?
not if it's normal hours. No.
Okay.
Yeah, they're called in, they're going to do the parade.
Right.
And it's not their normal.
Right. They should be compensated. Same with mandatory.
Okay. And on the military leave?
How is that treated now?
So currently it's treated, so you have X number of hours of military leave, and it's kind of dependent on what your job is within the city. And then you get paid for that leave if you have orders. Is that, and you're wanting to have that paid as overtime?
No, I guess if it's, counted as regular time.
Okay.
So if you had, National Guard, and then for 80 hours.
Counted as hours worked.
Right.
Toward reaching your overtime threshold.
Right.
Okay.
That way we're not penalizing folks that are serving the city and the country.
Okay, I understand.
So is that something we should also look at through the standpoint of, are they getting paid by the federal government for their military time while we're paying them as well? Is that part of that?
Depending upon they should be getting compensation from whatever branch they're in as well.
Okay.
Okay. Ms. Cade.
Okay, sorry. I agree with Ms. Chavarria about the, Councilmember Chavarria, sorry, about the percentages, the increasing percentages on the water bill. You probably said this, but why can't we just like go up evenly? Different, okay.
So it's based on our actual cost to operate and maintain the overall system and the debt service required for the capital projects associated with the water and sewer system. So, if we just said, hey, we're going to increase this much every year, say if we set that arbitrarily at 5%, some years we'd be overcharging, some years we'd be undercharging to actually operate, maintain, and make the improvements required for the system.
Okay. And then one more thing. On page 263, the water bill slide we were looking at, it was 80,667,701, and those first two numbers, charges for service water sales and charges for service sewer charges, those two added together equal that. All the other charges can't be added in.
So all those other charges are inclusive of the total revenue that we use to sustain that fund. Everything on page 263 through, 263. So we have a total of 100, that includes our enterprise fund, our enterprise debt fund, and our solid waste fund. So everything with the exception of the solid waste fund is used to meet those requirements for the enterprise fund.
Can you put that water bill slide up that we were just looking at? I don't remember what page it was. I'm sorry.
There it is. Oh. There.
So that total
So the total revenue line, not the water and sewer charges, but the total revenue line, that's all
83
inclusive.
million? That's
Yes.
all of it. Okay. All right. Thank you. That's all. Thank you, Rachel. I appreciate it.
Mr. Cousin?
Mayor, on slide 13, on the third bullet point, it's got the pay increase of 5% broken out at 3% market adjustment and 2% advance through the STEP program. On the 3%, how is that? How do you come up with 3%?
So that's in an agreement and conversation with our HR department and management, and kind of what we see similar municipalities around us doing.
So one of the things we look at there is while we've done an extensive deep dive into the market for who we compete with for employees in the civil service arena, and then we've also done a fairly extensive deep dive on fire pay plans. That's one of the goals we've set for HR this next year, is to do that for the rest of our pay plan. In the interim, we have situations where we have hard to fill positions, and we're not attracting quality candidates, or when we make offers, the amount we're offering we don't get them to come on board for those. So we take a look at those kind of on a case by case basis. Are those positions, are we in the right place in the market on those? And then we can make adjustments on what we're offering people coming into the organization to attract those qualified candidates. And so, it's those, select market analysis that we've done on those positions that have, driven what we're basing this on, that we do need to make a market adjustment to keep up with the market.
Okay, so that is strictly just what other peer cities, I guess, if you want to.
It's not strict. I mean, it's what we're seeing in the market and when we're trying to attract folks, and what we've had to adjust in certain areas to attract people. It's also looking at the market and what they're making changes in their pay plans as well. So it's a combination of those things. And then this next fiscal year, we're going to do a much deeper dive across the entirety of the non-civil service and the non-fire pay grades to do a good market analysis this next year to make sure we're where we want to be in the market for all those positions as well. But this is where we think we need to make the adjustment this year to continue to keep us competitive.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Can you go to slide number 30, please? So I'm just curious, how did you get the appraised value for this sample? Is it something you guys did?
That's actually provided to us by our advisor who signed off on the tax worksheet, and it is required by law now that we show that the change on the median homestead So that's what we've used for this example. But we can do other examples, I think, as the mayor and Councilmember Carbone requested.
Yeah, because I don't know about this council, but I got my appraisal. It didn't go up by $972 or $997. And I know we're showing a drop in our overall tax change, but $12, but I don't think that's going to happen. And then can you go back to the rates real quick?
So just to maybe reemphasize what Victor was saying, this is actually from the appraisal districts of what our median homesteaded taxable value is. So
Sure.
while it's not obviously not applicable across the board, there's going to be some that, you know, they increased above this. There's going to be others that maybe decreased. This is the actual median number provided to us by the taxing entities.
Okay. And can you show me the rates where you guys broke out the debt service and the OME? Yep, right there. Go back up on 26, sorry. Yeah, so I guess we're going up almost 5% on our O&M rate. And the, I guess the debt service has dropped, you know, I guess 4% roughly. How is that going to change when we sell the bonds for the new Rosewood project? Or Berry Rose, sorry. Thank you.
So just make sure we're separating things. You know, that's enterprise fund, so that's water and sewer bonds for the Berry Rose project. So that is not backed by tax. It's water and sewer COs backed by the increases to water and sewer rates.
Okay, sorry. Thank you so much.
And the debt service tax rate here does support our planned capital improvement program that is funded by the general fund. So our road projects, our park projects, our drainage projects, it does that debt rate supports the CIP funded by those bonds.
All right. And I guess what's bothering me is, you know, again, our O&M rate, I know we're giving some savings back in the debt service, and we're giving half a penny back to the taxpayers. But, I mean, you know, when you look at the percentages, when you look at it this way, it kind of looks very small and insignificant. But when you look at the percentage change, it's a significant increase in percentage, right? I mean, when you look at the values, I think we went from, I forgot, 18.29 billion to close to 19 billion overall value. That's almost a 6% or 5% increase. And then this OME is another 4% increase. I guess we're not really giving the savings back to the taxpayers, are we, with all these increases? And I don't know how this board feels about that, but is there any kind of appetite to kind of go back and to say, hey, we want to reduce the O&M rate down overall? Because we're just taking from one end, from the debt service savings, and just pushing it to something else.
May I say something? Thank you, Mayor. So what I'd like to look at is I think that the increase from 25 to proposed 26 is about a $2.8 million increase in expenditures. So maybe looking at what triggers that 2.8 increase, which is police, fire, health insurance cost, $500,000 in roads, and taking a look at that, like what are the top 4 triggers? Because if we reduce that, then how do we meet that police, fire, health cover cost? So I think if we can look at it that way, kind of back it out and look at the triggers, maybe that might help.
I think you kind of hit it on the head. It's the meet and confer agreement. It's the fire pay plan. It's the non-uniform pay plan, as well as the additional $500,000, the increases to insurance and things like that make up that addition. And then just maybe to put the overall tax rate in kind of some historical perspective, if you do have the slide that breaks it down between the debt service rate and the general fund rate. So if you go back, 10 years ago where we had 44 cents on the debt service rate, we really, as a growing city, leveraged ourselves pretty significantly to keep up with the growth with the major bond programs we had put in place at the time. And that was really done at the expense of our operating funds. So you can see through, our comparison of FTEs per 1,000 through the different departments, that it truly was, and still to this day is to some extent at the expense of our ability to provide all the services we want efficiently and as extensively as we want. We do that very with minimal staffing, I would say, compared to many of our peer cities. So, we really saw a O&M rate that wasn't sustainable over time. And that's why we've worked over many years to try to get more of our tax rate over to the O&M side to make sure we did have a sustainable O&M budget moving forward, especially as we get to the end of the TERS, where that value there will be split between the debt service and the operating rate. So, just kind of putting some of that in historical perspective is that where we did have a lot higher debt rate, it was at the expense of our operating rate. And then even with that, our operating expenditures for many of our departments was really restricted even over these years even further as we went from a volunteer fire department to a fire department that's got 140 plus people in operations and 6 stations. We did that in a very short period of time, all on the operating rate there, where we held the line in many other areas as far as what it costs to operate a city. So those are some of the kind of historical drivers in that where we've been and kind of where we are today and where we need to be in the future.
Let me follow up a little bit on that. If you go back, actually, even before 2016 and 2017, in fact, Victor and I had this conversation earlier today. I think it was in 2012 where the council's decision was made to go full steam ahead with complete, full-time fire EMS, and build that department. I think at that point, and Chief can correct me, but I think at that point we had the combo department, and I want to say it was 2012. It might have been 13, might have been 11, but I want to say somewhere in that time frame is when we did that. And every department across the city had to sacrifice in order to put, a complete, and we're the second largest paid, full staff paid in the Gulf Coast region. And so putting that all together and keeping our tax rate. So I think a lot of what you're seeing here, that debt rate, building fire stations, adding trucks and equipment and those types of things over that. And I think, and I'll say it, I think roads suffered probably more than anything. We had to keep a line on that in order to do, one of the things that we had to do was put a fire department together. So I think, I look back at it now with the tax calculation worksheet that changed in 2019, I think it was, to what we have today. I don't think we would have been able to do what we did with our fire department if the environment that we have today had been present in 2012. I don't think we could have done it with the continuing to compress and compress and compress on what we're able to do without going to the voters. I mean, again, you always have voter approval. We always can go out and go to a voter-approved rate and go to the voters and do things. So I think a lot of what we're seeing here was a result of a growing city, but I think it was a result of a calculated move to make sure that we have paid fire staff equal to what our residents would come to expect. And so now we're starting to see some, I'll call it breathing, where our budget can breathe a little bit between debt service and M&O, and unfortunately not get caught up on roads and those types of things, but start a move in a direction to where we can get some of our maintenance. It is M&O. I know it's called general fund, but it is M&O. I mean, we need to get caught up on maintenance, not just operations, but maintenance. And so anyway, I don't know if that helps, but I think it's a great question.
It does, and just what you said sparks a couple of other things that really put the pressure on that operating side. Is that when we did stand up the fire department in short order, there really wasn't a plan to replace the large equipment and replace our ambulances on a regular basis. And so that's really been a focus of the last 4 years and has to be a focus moving forward. And the same thing with our roads. We haven't put the money into recapitalization. We are still working towards those internal service funds, like to make sure we're recapitalizing our facilities and our IT infrastructure as we need to moving forward. Those are all things I think were sacrificed during those years, and that's why we are seeing that O&M rate grow, as we're able to grow into it to try to make sure that as we move forward, we are replacing the large fire apparatus when they should be, and that we're putting the money aside so that we can replace them when they should be. And that's those are all huge pressures and factors in our operating budget moving forward.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, just to add a little bit more to that, I think all of us are always in favor of reducing the tax rate everywhere that we can, because we all have to pay the taxes too. And so nobody wants to pay more than they have to. But at the same time, I think it's incumbent upon us to consider the long term. You look at this elaborated discussion we've had over the last several months about water rates, and it goes back to a number of factors, but one of them being years of not changing the water rates. And now we're fighting this crazy all over the place. And you look at our proposed budget for this year, and we've talked about roads, we've talked about fire apparatus, but it's also in here that we've paid for studies that have told us that we have a $26 million ticket coming for IT at some point. We've got a $9.4 million bill we're going to have to pay at some point for facilities replacements and things like that. So we have a lot of catching up to do in a lot of different areas. And I, for one, don't want a council sitting here 10 years from now saying, well, if council back then would have properly funded us, then we wouldn't be dealing with this crazy rates now. So there's a balancing act that we've got to
And
deal
some of
with.
that is the sacrifices that I talked about.
Yes, yeah,
exactly.
Yeah, you've got to set priorities. That's why we have strategic priorities. We have strategic planning. You can't tackle everything at once. Right. But when you know things are in front of you, taking the steps necessary to approach those in a proper way, I think is important. If we can do that and cut the tax rate, awesome. But if we can't, I think we have to be responsible enough to say, we know this is coming down the line, so let's deal with it.
Questions, comments? Trent, what else we got?
So other than next steps, I think Rachel already covered those. I think the real thing we definitely need tonight is some consensus on the water and sewer rate increase. And if there is any desire to do anything on the budget as presented.
Can you put the 5.5% that real quick? So let me ask a question on this and how quickly we could potentially get an answer on it, because I think it would be nice knowing if we bring a policy to the audit committee and then ultimately to council. It'd be nice to kind of know where that's going to take us, because it'd be nice to take 5.5% and then know that 16.7% is going to dip way down if we do what we're thinking about doing. I don't know. The question I have is how quickly, not know a concrete answer. I don't think we have that until you go to the rating agencies. But can we get a ballpark of what we think that's going to look like if we go below 25% to say 20% or 15%?
I think we can run numbers, but again, as you said, we wouldn't know the consequences of actually doing those things.
So I don't know that, because I don't know a consensus tonight's the right answer without knowing what that might do, right? Mr.
Mayor, I would be in favor of 5.5, and here's my thought process. Just like this year, we were way ahead in our reserve of 50%, but the council has to know we may even go to 17 if we come under this year, right? So I think I'd rather do 5.5 and take the risk of saying, look, 16.7 or what was it if it was 7%?
Goes to 13, I believe.
13. But you have that range in between, but knowing that it could be less than that. And if we do 7 and we sell more water, it could be less than 13 as well. So
I guess where I'm headed is,
Mayor, could we pull up the slide on the history of what our rate increases have been?
We don't have that slide in this presentation.
What was the one that had the, like 4 or 5 years in a row of 0, and then?
Yeah, it was 5 years in a row from 10
whatever.
through
But I mean,
14, and then
that was our water rates, wasn't it?
That's not in this
it's
presentation.
not in the
It's
presentation.
not in this presentation.
in-
No,
It's
it's not in
not.
the presentation.
We had it in the last presentation when we discussed that. We'll
My question that
See if
I'm
we can get
getting
that
to,
up as
though,
we continue
is
to
can
talk.
we take the
Well,
week?
yeah.
We are meeting next Monday.
Well, no, but what I'd like to show is when I first got elected, the second year was going to be 29%.
And it wasn't.
And it wasn't. It wasn't anywhere close to it. Now, it wasn't 5. It was, I think, 16 or 12. And then the same thing the year next, we had this big, oh my God, we're going to fall off the cliff. And then it came in a lot lower. Now, I'm not saying that, and my recollection is going to be that we're paying debt on our water treatment plant out on the west side of town. And that's why the spike in those years.
Well, yeah, and we had 2 back-to-back years of drought that
Right,
drove up.
that did it too. So, I mean, those type things. But when we look at it, to me, the 4 years I've been here, it's always been doom and gloom next year. And granted, we are going to have a big payment come up, so there is going to be an impact there. But that's what if we could pull that up just to kind of see.
While they're looking at pull it up, I would say to both of y'all's points, I agree with you on the 5.5% for this year, because I think there's a lot we need to figure out with these reserves that we're talking about, and I don't think it's realistic to figure out how the bond market is going to respond to us by next week with making these changes.
And I'm not asking to go to the bond market with that question. What I'm asking is take some educated guesses. We know what the reserves look like. We know based on this, we can do a 20 and a 15 and plug those in and raise our interest rates.
Assuming the bond market is
Assuming the bond market, says, okay, we can do that, but your interest rates instead of, 4.2% are going to be 4.7%. Or whatever. And so I think we can give consensus next Monday night. We're meeting next Monday night. We have an agenda.
Right.
And we could throw a workshop on there to give consensus. And the calculations that I'm talking about, I would imagine are not a lengthy calculation. We're instead of 25%, we want to make it say a 20 and a 15. I don't think I want to go any lower than that.
They're not, but I would maybe suggest we do it when we've got the next regularly scheduled budget workshop, because we've got to have that next Monday's budget published tomorrow evening. So,
And that's in 2 weeks, right?
unless we can get a consensus tonight, as Member Carbone requested.
I'm pretty good with the 5.5. I mean, there's so many variables out there. We'd have the Texas Water Development Board come back and we can sell some 1% bonds too. I mean, there's so many outside variables on that. I'm of the camp of going with the 5.5.
At our last meeting, we were 3-3. Member Patel was not here. And I was 5.5. Tony was 5.5, and Laney was. Member Cade was 5.5.
Right.
And the rest were at 7. So I mean, unless somebody switched their vote.
Now we have Member Patel.
Well, no, but I mean, that's what I'm saying. With his input, Member Cade, Carbone, and myself were 5.5, and the other 3 were, so we were split with Member Patel at
7.
5.5 now.
Yeah, I was at 7 the last time we talked about it, and frankly, I've had more time to talk with staff and better understand all of the various impacts that this has. And I've had a great conversation with staff regarding the reserves, and I think we're going to find out that we're stacking reserves on top of reserves on top of reserves when we really dig into this. So I'm more comfortable excuse me, at the 5.5 with the directive that staff has already taken on themselves to find that piece out, because we may be able to drop those future rates pretty significantly if we can adjust how much we're just squirreling away. We're required to. It's not just arbitrary, but I think when we started digging through the numbers the other day and looking at it, it really seems like you're just stacking the same dollars on top of each other and reserving for just, Roebuck might get mad at me, but just to make the bondholders happy. And
That's not Roebuck, that's the bondholders. They are happy.
Fair enough. But that's not our job. Our job is to protect our city, not the investors. So given additional information since the last time we talked about it, I'm fine with the 5.5 for this year, with us working on those other numbers for next year.
Again, I'm at 7%. I do think that we are projecting, we're forecasting, we haven't changed the policies, and I believe that that can have an impact on people that are in fixed incomes and are elder. So we don't know. I mean, we're forecasting this right now. So I'm not on board. I'm at 7.
Yeah, I'm gonna, I'd like to see what comes out of this. Obviously, I would love it to be 5.5, but I agree with Member Chavarria. I'm gonna pause and see what we can gather. I think we've got some really good movement, and if it could be shown to us, even recalculating like the mayor brought up. I'm quick to want 5.5. I'm also very mindful of those spikes that I'm seeing in front of me.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So
and just real quick, I was going to say, I think the 5.5% this year is going to be, number one, a consensus maker, and that's where we're headed. What I'd like to see, so we're not making all of this in a vacuum, is if we make some assumptions of a 20% and a 15% in the outer years, and knowing that may cause a rating of an interest rate increase of X, we can probably make that calculation and then see what those outer years are. So instead of 16%, my guess is it's going to come down because we're paying that down. And so I still think we need to do that exercise so we're knowing it. And we're making some calculated assumptions. All of this is assumptions. It always is.
Well, I mean,
but it's a better calculated assumption than just paying reserve on top of reserve.
If you look at this, they finally got it up here.
Right.
If you look at this, it said 29, it was 14.
Right.
So, like I said, depending on what is included and not included, I mean, yes, we have hard numbers for the debt sales for Barry Rose.
Yeah.
That will be there no matter what.
And somewhere we have back, because I did it in a presentation for State of the City one year, all those zeros, I think we put them at 3%, I think was the number that we used. The 15 and 16 in those years dropped all the way down to like 12 and 13%. And then all the way out, that 14% would have been down like 9 or 10. Mm-hmm. And so, again, it just shows that if we have some minimum there, we're able to go a little bit flatter along the
Inflation
lines.
rate covers, everybody.
Right, exactly.
So
Great conversation.
So with respect to those that want 7, I hear a fairly good consensus on 5.5, but we will provide, what that looks like moving forward. And I'm thinking maybe we just do that as part of our budget follow-up memo. Okay. And we'll take a look at different reserve levels and then the best we can, project what impact that may have on our borrowing rates in those outer years, and just provide that information as well. So.
Yeah. I don't want to scare the rating agencies by going and asking them, but I think
I think we can make some assumptions now, and we'll dig into that more detail when we start actually analyzing our policy and have that more detailed conversation at that point. I definitely want to get through selling the last tranche of bonds for the Barry Rose Longwood project before we would want to impact any of those things. So.
Right, I got you. Any other questions, comments? What else do we have? Is that it?
That's it. We will follow up with any questions we didn't get answered as we went through the discussion tonight with a budget memo like we traditionally do. have that out to you before we have our next budget discussion, which is scheduled for the 25th. I didn't hear a whole lot of, things to bring back for discussion at that meeting. So I think we'll answer the questions and just see if there's anything else we need to work through.
Real quick, traditionally, we've had that budget memo and questions being added on the website as well. So is there a landing page?
It's there. It's stood up. It's got the previous presentations. It's got the previous memos as well. And then if there's anything else you've got that wasn't answered tonight, or you want to ask if we can get those, this week, then we'll try to get everything else piled up and compiled.
I guess that's on a budget landing page.
Yes.
So for the budget.
Yes. Same landing page we had with the past budget information. It's just updated to include FY26. And then we'll move into the first readings of those rates. And just, I may have to lean on Darren here for a second, but our tax rate, because it is slightly above the no new revenue rate, requires a supermajority.
60%.
60%.
60%, which is 5.
It's 4.2, which means 5, yes.
And that's 5 whether we have
Unless
5
anybody's
here.
willing to be dismembered.
And that's 5 whether we have 5 here or 7 here. It's always 5.
It is always going to be 5.
Yeah. So the tax rate requires that, and then of course the budget is just a normal majority. So just wanted to make that as we approach those votes and those meetings, make sure everybody's on board and aware of that as well.
Okay. All right. With that, we will move to adjournment at 4:50.